All right, hello Science 10. Today we are going to be talking about, let's make sure you can see, we are going to be talking about energy transfer. Okay, the reason why we're going to talk about this, right, is because it's not much of a surprise, but energy can move. Right, and again, energy and matter are closely related, but they're not the same thing, so you can't just physically move energy, you can't just see that, right? It has to do other things, which is where the term transfer comes in, right? It has to transfer through things. So, energy transfer involves the movement of the same form of energy, okay? So this is to deal with just the transfer part. So same form of energy. Right? So this is to say that the energy stays the same. So if you're dealing with mechanical energy, you're going to transfer it and you're still going to end up with mechanical energy. If you've got thermal energy, you're going to change it or you're going to transfer it and you're still going to have thermal energy, right? We're not talking about transforming energy, I think. We're just talking about transferring. Okay? So some examples would be with thermal. We talked about this one already. So thermal transfers from hot objects to cold ones. And this transfer, this is what we call heat, right? We've talked about this before. And when the transfer occurs, hot object loses its thermal energy or loses energy. And cold gains. Okay. A couple examples of this, right? With our stove, right? Warming up a pot of water, the thermal energy is transferred from the stove to the pot of water, right? If you have you have your pot full of water, and then you have your stove. You won't naturally have the heat or the thermal energy from the pot or the water going down into the stove. It goes up this way, right? Okay, and if we're talking about maybe, say, mechanical energy, then we're talking about, this would be known as, again, if you're transferring from mechanical energy from one object to another, this would be called a collision. Okay. So, again, a collision is when this transfer of mechanical energy is when a stationary object begins moving, right? So when a stationary So again, so a collision is basically when a stationary object or a slower object relative to your moving object starts to move, and then the moving object is either going to come to a complete stop or it's just going to slow down, right? So the object that is slowing down is losing energy, and then the one that's here is gaining energy. Okay, so one good example of this would be I guess we put the number 6 or something on that. And okay, so what I've got here is, maybe we're playing pool or something, and you've got your cue stick, and you have a stationary cue ball. You will give this mechanical energy, you'll move the cue stick, it will have a collision with the cue ball, the stick stops moving, and then the cue ball goes this way. And when it hits this one, which is not moving compared to the cue ball, it will transfer the mechanical energy to the next ball, right? But in this case, maybe the cue ball doesn't come to a complete stop, right? And it just kind of slows down instead or bounces off to a different direction or something like that, right? So this would be an example of mechanical energy transfer, sorry. And some other examples, right? So like if you're thinking about electrical energy, they can produce power or produce energy. It's produced at a plant. And however the plant produces it, that's a different story. And then it goes from the plant to the home via like electrical power lines. Electrical lines, right? Or you have radiant energy, right? You have the sun, and then we have the earth. It's pretty bad earth, but bear with me. And the radiant energy from here is transferred through space, right? It doesn't just spontaneously go from point A to point B, right? It has to go through. So it transfers through space. And then same with the idea of space or with air, right? If you have, let's talk about sound. If you have like a radio, it's a pretty old radio, but bear with me. It's going to produce sound waves that are going to transfer to your ear. And these transfer through air. Right, so again, nothing can get from point A to point B without there being a transfer occurring, right? So the energy inside the cue ball has to have contact or collision in order to transfer energy to this, right? Similarly, in order to have the power, the electricity has to travel or transfer through the lines to our home, right? So there's a whole bunch of different things there. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today. We're just talking about transfer, okay? We're taking this nice and easy. We got lots of time to cover all this stuff, so I'm not too worried about it. If it doesn't take you a full hour, then great. You have a little bit of extra time on your hands, okay? That is it. Take care, everybody.